They say home is where the heart is, but in the new normal, it is now literally where the consumer is. As global economies make the long, arduous trek towards resurgence, Indian companies too will need to tailor their strategies to the unique business landscape that's being reshaped by the ongoing COVID crisis. Consumer behavior is changing, and many of these unfolding trends will settle down as new habits, albeit in varying degrees. As brands are leveraging digital to simplify user experiences, they're also exploring social creativity as one of the key levers to build deeper consumer connections. Hi, I'm Suresh Venkat, and in this episode of Facebook Presents Turn the Tide, Unlock the New Normal, in association with CNBC TV 18, we will focus on the digital creative playbook developed by Facebook and Ogilvy and explore creative strategies to navigate this new normal. Over the next half an hour, we analyze how brands can harness the power of mobile storytelling to drive growth in the new normal. Today, I'm joined by Sandeep Bhushan, Director and Head of India GMS Facebook, and Kunal Jeswani, CEO Ogilvy India. Welcome, Sandeep and Kunal. Sandeep, first question to you. For starters, what is the digital creative playbook and how is it relevant to marketers on one hand and creative teams on the other hand, especially in current times?
Thank you, Suresh. First up, a big thank you to Ogilvy, Kunal and the wonderful team, global leaders, but also key partners as we've been thinking through all that we need to put together for businesses to move out of the current situation and get back to growth. Fundamentally, we've been speaking about this for a bit now. There are very big shifts in the consumers, both in their social lives, as also their therefore relationship with brands and businesses. Some of the shifts we've spoken about are the fact that there is massive social distancing, there is income uncertainty, and very different journeys around businesses and brands that consumers now undertake. Our task has been to understand what those are, and if I can call out just three critical ones, which are the most relevant. One is, of course, that we are in an omni-channel world. What that basically means is journeys start on mobile. Mobile influence is massively up. We recently saw across categories, they're up 10, 20, 30 points. In a mobile kind of category, for example, smartphones, 70% will now be mobile influenced. So first, they're spending time on mobile, even as they go and finish their shopping omni-channel, which is either online or offline. Second is trust is critical, and trust has two dimensions. One, brand and brand heritage and equity. Second is a safe way to engage with brands, such as the retail or delivery experience. And third is social distancing itself. Just because I cannot go out, it does not take away my need to understand all of the feature sets and all of the potential values that the brand brings. So what can we do to help brands, therefore, override these challenges of social distancing, build trust, and engage in a way knowing that mobile influence is central, but purchases are now happening both on commerce and offline at an increased pace. So these are some of the challenges, and marketers now are working through each of these.
Kunal, give us a few key highlights from the digital creative playbook, both from the point of view of marketers and of creative teams who are both looking for newer ways to connect with consumers.
So look, there are three parts to it, right? The first part is really digital strategies for the new normal, which is how do you use social to build your brand? How do you use social to drive commerce? How do you use social to drive experiences? Right? And so we've packaged everything we know about strategy. We've taken the current COVID environment, worked with Facebook and said, okay, now this is the environment we're in. What's everything we can give you in terms of tools for marketers, to help you leverage the social platforms that are available. Again, to build brands, to drive commerce and drive experiences. The second part, which is the creative side of it, and we open this up to the whole industry, right? All agencies and clients alike, to say what are the best practices really for storytelling on mobile. And that's just recognizing that the environment in which we consume creative has changed so dramatically. The bulk of everything we consume today is on our mobile devices. Right? And how do you shift industry thinking from the horizontal rectangular television format into new formats that are more amenable to social and more amenable to mobile? And the third part of it, which I think is also critical, is how do you leverage creators, influencers, new formats, new technologies, right? How do you take all the ammunition that's available to us as agencies and as marketers to get the most out of social for our brands? And really, how do you take best practices from there and build them into your marketing strategy?
Sandeep, back to you with a Facebook specific question. Now, we're either going to be seeing new internet users or consumers who might be trading down in certain segments. How can Facebook help businesses to both build brands and to drive commerce, especially through mobile?
The Facebook piece in this start from the fact that our scale today at 400 million plus allows businesses to access consumers across the length and breadth of this country. More importantly, we are able to segment these consumers. One of the interesting pieces we saw in the CPG report that we put out with BCG is that there is a certain number that wants to downtrade, but an equal number also wants to uptrade on consumer goods. The question is, how do you get to them? Who are they? And what's the appropriate offering? So the scale and segmentation is the starting point. The tools to do storytelling, let's say, when you talk about the brand or the experience play, now are many. To illustrate, the most basic storytelling formats such as thumb stoppers, which Vodafone, for example, used for its 4G campaign, or the leveraging of influencers, all the way to Instagram stories, allows for a massive canvas to now do the brand building and experience play. Leveraging influencers, for example, just because I cannot again go and get my expert advice from the store, can I trust an expert to either color my hair or ask the question on an automobile? The influencer play starts to come together. And finally, of course, it's about results. We know from the CMM study with Mondelez of how Facebook is critical to their share gain in mass retail. So whether we're talking brands and brand equity and trust, experiences, or commerce and sales, across the axis, tools today are entirely available to reach the length, breadth of the country at the scale we have. So that's certainly our contribution on how we can help.
Kunal, back to you. Give us some of the key creative principles which marketers need to embrace in this increasingly digitally influenced world.
Okay, so look, we're all used to working with brands and saying, listen, let's be true to the brand platform and create every piece of work that lines up and is true to the brand platform, right? That's a great starting point. But when you're working for storytelling on mobile, there are many other things you can take into consideration. The first one is that you're not broadcasting. You can target, like Sandeep said, you can segment and target, and you can look at different pieces of communication for different cohorts, right? So figure out who you're targeting, what are the differences between each of those cohorts, and how do you need to tweak communication for each and every one of them. The last part is there's a lot available to us that we can leverage now. You can leverage data. You can leverage the possibilities on the device. Our devices are changing every 6 months. There are new capabilities. What can you do with those? You can leverage the digital platforms themselves. There is so much innovation coming to the table now from Facebook, from Instagram. How do you take that and bring that into your communication as well? And if you can find a sweet spot between all three, which is being true to the brand platform, engaging relevant consumers, and leveraging the data, the device, or the digital platform possibilities, then you have work that really stands out and is powerful. Beyond that, I can give you 5 simple hacks that you can use to make storytelling on mobile far more effective than it is today. The first one is build a consistent visual language. If you look at any of the work we do today on Vodafone, on Cadbury, on Savlon, on a host of other brands, you'll find a very, very distinctive visual language. What that does is that as a consumer is scrolling through their feed on any given day, it helps you identify the brand's communication in a split second subconsciously. The second is keep content short. We've all got used to working in 20-second, 30-second formats for television. Bring that thinking onto mobile as well. Sometimes even shorter. You're thinking on stories on Instagram, for example, think in 15 seconds. Right? It helps you leverage really how consumers operate on those platforms. The third is think vertical or square or in the feed. The horizontal frame that we're used to for television is limiting on mobile, right? Because it gives you only that much real estate. Use the vertical real estate. Use how consumers use their devices and are used to using them. Use that to your advantage, right? The fourth is make it interactive. Every social platform today, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, or anyone else, gives you options to drive action. So make it interactive, make it very, very clear to consumers what they need to do and drive action. And the last bit is make it work immediately. That's important because you'll know this as you scroll through social media yourself. Every piece of advertising you consume in mute first.
Sandeep, in your view, how should marketers and creative teams leverage the digital creative playbook?
Yeah, I think Kunal laid it out beautifully. So the creative playbook is here. Uh, those hacks, those principles, those heuristics are not just currently in development, they're all out there and business results are visible. So I have only one invitation to marketers and creative teams is to ask the question of which business problem are we solving? Which stage of the consumer journey are we trying to tackle? The tools are there, solutions are there, and the creative playbook is there. So it's about doing it. It's all available, and we're all here to help.
All right, that brings us almost to the end of this segment of the show, but not before I get closing comments from both our speakers. Kunal, you first. What's the one thing that creative people should take away from this digital creative playbook?
I think the easiest thing you can start with is just take the hacks, right? It's very, very simple stuff. Just build it into your communication. It'll become that much more effective.
All right, Sandeep, final question for you. What's the one thing that a marketer should take away from the digital creative playbook?
The mobile ecosystem is entirely ready to solve the business problem and the brand share agenda that you have. So go for it.
And with that, I'd like to thank our first set of guests, Sandeep and Kunal, for sharing their insights. Thank you, gentlemen. For our listeners, if you'd like to know more about the digital creative playbook, please scan the QR code to access the playbook. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Nirmal Pulikal, Head Creative Shop Facebook India, and Prem Narayan, Chief Strategy Officer, Ogilvy India. Nirmal and Prem, welcome to the show. Nirmal, first question for you. What are the Facebook creative formats that are being increasingly adopted by marketers in the post-COVID world?
Let me start with the popular formats, the ads on feed and stories. Now, with the disruption in TV production, we're seeing a lot more made for Facebook, made for Instagram videos, and that's awesome. In terms of newer formats, we're seeing AR being used to really good effect for a more immersive experience. To cite a few examples, I think Swiggy and Vivo have used AR ads very well. Vivo just recently used it to launch one of their products and with fantastic results. And chatbots, of course, this really helps consumers. Vodafone collaborated with the health ministry recently to promote a WhatsApp API bot for authentic health information. And over and above these formats, we're also seeing a big uptick in branded content ads, which are now possible for Facebook and Instagram, and they work with almost all formats: feed, stories, polling, etc.
Prem, over to you. Now, you have an insight into many brands who embrace social creativity. Tell us about brands that have delivered the triple whammy. And by that, I mean transformed consumer experiences, driven commerce, and redefined their brand stories.
Okay, thanks, Suresh, for having me. When you see that, and I hear a lot of it from clients today about, given the new situation, how do I become more centered on the digital platforms? And on your triple whammy, one of the cases that come to my mind that really drove brand and was central to it was the work that we did for Cadbury and the Purple Heart. And it came from what was great about it was Cadbury wanted to connect with the youth. There was a lot of cyberbullying as an issue that was there on online platforms, and somehow the fit with the brand being about generosity and how you could drown the hate with just a heart, and it did. And what was great about it was understood the medium. It used something that was already available in the form of a heart, which most people use, and it just lent support to something that people really cared about. It fitted the brand. It was built for the medium. It had some stupendous results. Lots of people loved it. Lots of comments, organically and otherwise. So I think that was one great example of a brand, of a campaign that was done on digital that really built brand. I also particularly like the Uber piece, which we did last in the World Cup. It was a great example of using a short game within Facebook for people to understand a pretty complex contest where you won different points depending on whether you rode on an auto or on a cab. And what was great was we were able to tailor the creative by city, by gender, and it was a simple way to explain the actual product and the promo to people.
Nirmal, now producing creative assets like films, for instance, is going to be a challenge in current times. What's your advice to the creative community? How should they be thinking about creative assets?
I think shifting from live action to stock might be the biggest trend that we're seeing in advertising right now. And I also saw a lot of really neat animation work from Ola recently. So animation is another thing that doesn't require live production. So that's definitely one way to differentiate your art and your craft. From the Facebook point of view, we are doing a few things that we are working closely with agencies to share some of the tools on our platform, which makes it easy for you to create assets. There are some fantastic tools like Mobile Studio and video creation kits, which make it really easy for you to just create assets very simply. So the answer may not always be a video. So there's so many creative ways to reach your audience that is not a video. Playable ads, AR filters, branded content. These are great ways to produce assets without needing live production.
Prem, question for you. There are clearly multiple challenges being faced by marketers in adopting digital creative practices. How should these challenges be addressed?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think to start with, I think most marketers are extremely keen to engage in the digital world far more than ever before. And I think the current situation is simply leapfrogged and accelerated the need to do so. To me, the great opportunities, and marketers think about it, there are two. One is this whole debate between brand building on these platforms vis-a-vis drive to action and short-term sales. And I think, and for some reason, there's been this thinking that the digital medium and some of these platforms are great for immediate action and not for brand building. But there's enough evidence now from experts in the field that a healthy mix is a 60-40, if not a 75-25, in terms of your investment between brand building and short-term sales measures like activation stuff. Of course, you need to be careful to build the brand using the medium to its best possible way. And some examples that come to my mind, we spoke about the Cadbury Purple Heart. I've seen some wonderful work done by KFC in the Middle East. Some really good brand work. There's some work that I've seen Ogilvy do in Dusseldorf for German Rail. So great pieces of work that are on brand. So that's one debate that marketeers think about, and I think they should go after. So please, I think we should think about both building the brand and the short term. Both are important.
Nirmal, influencer marketing is clearly growing. I have a double question for you. What are the creative opportunities for influencers on one hand and for brands leveraging influencers on Facebook on the other?
See, Suresh, if you actually think about it, what is the big difference that these platforms really bring to the world? We all grew up in a world where advertising was basically propaganda that was beamed at you. Buy this soap because it washes whiter, and it was acceptable. But we've now come into a time when it's spam. So it's more than just being an add-on. I think it's vital for us to be part of, or to also create content which is not spam, which is stuff that would be naturally part of that world. And having said that, the other opportunity is that people don't like hard sell anymore. That's something that we're seeing a lot of resistance with. And this involving a creator, being more part of content that people want to see brings an element of storytelling into the brand. So I think that's the big opportunity here for influencer marketing.
Prem, what's your advice to creative teams as they take the principles from the digital creative playbook into actual execution?
The first thing that I would like to tell my creative friends is that, as always, the idea is the most important thing. And I think going forward, a lot of the technology and the applications will be common and available to everybody else. And ultimately, what will win is creativity. And I know there's enough data to say that, you know, a huge proportion of what works on these platforms is a combination of the brand and how creative the piece of work is. Like I always felt, the advertising or the communication of a brand on these platforms is itself a brand. So why do we go and like to see or watch or click on stuff that we have an affinity towards? Is because those brand advertising have a reputation. I think creative people have that great opportunity to remember that the idea and creativity is fundamentally important. The other thing that really helps, I think, is more than other mediums. It's a visual medium, often in mute. So brands that have a strong visual language and consistency, I think, will be tremendously benefited.
Okay, final question for both my panelists. Nirmal, you first. What's the one thing that a creative person should take away from the digital creative playbook?
One of the biggest areas that marketers are looking for solutions right now is to win consumer trust. People are very careful to order from restaurants, for example, scared to order from a food delivery app. So what would you do? Traditionally, you would do a front page solus or a full page ad which said "Trust me" with a body copy listing 1, 2, 3 RTBs, reasons to believe. But the question is, why should I believe you just because you said "Trust me"? Now, if you look at how I would answer that question using our platforms, imagine if a restaurant went live, and used maybe an influencer or even without, and showed you their clean kitchen and all the steps they're taking. Isn't that a lot more believable? And it's not just that. On using our platforms, you can do a perfect targeting. You can retarget consumers who have ordered on food delivery apps. You can sequence these threads to promote them, and then you can use live influencers and finally even make that conversion to the final sale.
Prem, similar question to you. What's the one thing that a planner should take away from the digital creative playbook?
As a planner, no better time than now to look at the whole digital play. And I think the greatest opportunity that planners can now think of is to look at the complete journey from creating desire to actually fulfilling the sale and mapping that entire journey out. And to me, going beyond communication to creating brand experiences and how we can make that happen on these platforms is a stupendous opportunity. I think people will remember brands for the experiences that they create now.
Well, that's all we have on this show today. Thank you, Nirmal. Thank you, Prem, for sharing your insights into the changing consumer behavior and the immense possibilities for business that can be gleaned from the digital creative playbook. There's a lot that businesses will take away from today's discussion. Listeners, if you'd like to know more about the digital creative playbook, please scan the QR code to download the same. It's a wrap on this special episode of Facebook Presents Turn the Tide, Unlock the New Normal in association with CNBC TV 18. Goodbye, and many thanks for tuning in.